Why, good morning. How you doing? It snowed in Texas and Oklahoma, and it's still snowing. Places like Arkansas and Mississippi and Tennessee. We're going to show you where the storm is and the progress over the next 24 to 36 hours where it's going to snow and ice. Yeah, that's still on the menu. And I'll show you a few pictures here in just a second of our frozen lake nearby. 6:04 in the morning on January 10th. Happy Friday. Uh, it's a beautiful day. In fact, yesterday, this is what it looked like out at Prairie Rose State Park, which is about a 10-minute drive from me to the east. And yeah, the ice is thick enough now. They are ice fishing. Now, Wednesday morning I went out, it was 0. And there's a coyote trudging across the frozen lake. Unfortunately, all I had was my iPhone instead of my Nikon. And so I zoomed in as far as I could, so it's kind of rough looking. But that's a coyote trudging across the frozen lake. It was so cool. Also, Wednesday morning, 0 degrees, sunshine. I call this one the cold sun. Just having no effect on the frozen lake whatsoever, but sure is pretty. I go out there almost every day. It's just gorgeous. All right, here's what's going on. Hazards this morning across the country. Our storm rages on in the mid-south with winter storm warnings still in effect. Eastern Oklahoma, parts of northeastern Texas, all of Arkansas, pretty much, into northern Louisiana, even Shreveport. And then, of course, across Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, getting into Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, which I already mentioned, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, southern Missouri, even parts of Kansas getting in the act, especially when you throw in the winter weather advisories, which go all the way up into Michigan. Meanwhile, it's freezing cold in South Texas. Freeze warnings, freeze watches, almost down to Brownsville, but Corpus Christi, you're in that. And then Florida, southern Georgia, freeze warnings still. We're still hanging on to winter weather advisories in New Mexico into far west Texas. And southern Arizona is freezing this morning. We still have red flag warnings concern for parts of southern California, even though the winds are dying down. Meanwhile, up in Montana, winter weather advisories up there and a winter storm watch. And then we see just winter weather advisories kind of scattered through the Intermountain West, including the Pacific Northwest. 24-hour temperature change from yesterday. It is warmer here in the Midwest and parts of the plains and all the way down into the southeast. It is colder further to the west in the North Plains and Central Plains. Even down to Texas, Amarillo 10 degrees cooler, but the rest of the state 1 or 2 degrees either side of what it was 24 hours ago. But the southeast is warmer, but not warm compared to average. It's still below average, even though it's warmed up this morning. And we have much below average up there in parts of the Midwest into Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. And the current temperatures, yeah, it's cold. It's 38 degrees in Tucson. This is 5 o'clock temperature Central Time, so it's 4 a.m. in Tucson at 38. So they have a 3 more hours to cool off even further. We still see, even though we've warmed up from yesterday, it's still 30 degrees in Memphis. So cold enough to snow, obviously, or freezing rain. That goes for you, northern Alabama. And then temperatures in the teens and even single digits for Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, of course, the mountains, and the Rockies, and the West Coast a little bit warmer than that. All right, surface for today. Here's our storm trudging across the Mid-South with heavy snow, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, getting into North Carolina and Virginia, and then there's ice. I think that's going to be more of an issue than it was in Texas. And we're going to go with the European model today because I think the European handled the ice better than the GFS. But I think the ice potential is going up a little bit with this storm. And then still looking for some rain, maybe even some heavy rain south of that. Pacific Northwest, rain on the coast, rain and snow inland, heavy snow maybe, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and a little bit of icing concerns perhaps, Washington, South Dakota. And we see still some snow up there in the Great Lakes for tomorrow. our storm is gone. I mean, our mid south storm has accelerated and moved out to sea, so not a factor anymore. A little bit of snow around the Great Lakes and Northeast. A little bit of rain and snow, South Dakota, Nebraska, into western Iowa, and then snow, across the upper Midwest. The heavy snow is going to be back in Montana and Idaho, and you see a cold front moving through Wyoming, Utah there. 48-hour precipitation. It's going to be heavy rain, Louisiana, Mississippi, and into Alabama. Could see 1.5 inches, maybe approaching 2 inches in some areas. Now, of course, some of this is going to be freezing rain and some of this is going to be snow. Pacific Northwest, rain on the coast. Snow for the most part inland. Here is the snow for the next 2 days. And the bullseye, kind of Arkansas, southern Missouri, into western Tennessee, parts of Kentucky, where you're looking at 6 to 8 inches plus. And then those amounts lessen as you head to the east, although Nashville's still looking at 6 inches or so. I'd call it 4 to 6. Kentucky, same thing, 4 to 5. But you get into North Carolina, South Carolina, we're going to add in some more ice, so it's going to knock down your snowfall totals, I think. But could be some icing concerns for like Atlanta and into South Carolina, especially, where you see, 1/4 inch of ice possible here, or even more for northern Georgia, and that could bring down power lines, tree damage, knocking power out. And of course, when you get that much freezing rain, it may not be too slick at first if the surface temperatures are warm, but they could cool off, and it's tough to get around. By Sunday, well, we have some more snow just on the light side mostly, for the Rockies and into the Intermountain West, although some heavy snow possible for Montana. As we get into next week, we're going to start turning those snow jets back on for the lakes, but we do see some light snow, even getting into Wisconsin. Wisconsin's been hurting for snow, and so I think you're going to see at least a little bit. We've been hurting for snow too, but I think we're going to maybe get a less than a little bit, but maybe some. All right, let's go to the European model, and we're starting out at 6 a.m. And here's our big storm. And we've got heavy rain down in New Orleans, turning into a little bit of ice for parts of northern Mississippi. But when you get closer to Memphis, it's heavy snow. So heavy snow coming down for much of Arkansas, into northern Mississippi and western Tennessee. And that moves into northern Alabama too. And as we go through the day today, we see that storm make westward progress. The snow intensity lightening up a little bit, but still some good snow today for Nashville. And then moving into the Midwest and even up into Michigan, seeing some of that snow. And you see some of the ice breaking out northern Georgia into South Carolina as we get into tonight. Quite a bit of ice for South Carolina and into Georgia and a little bit into North Carolina. And our snow stretching all the way to Michigan down to Tennessee. As we get into, this is midnight tonight right here, so the storm is almost on the coast, but we have ice in the Carolinas, we have snow in North Carolina, and scattered snows up there into the Great Lakes and moving into the east, and then that slides on out of here. Then my eyes turn back to a system here. We'll watch a little bit of rain and snow bust out in western Iowa as we get into late Saturday. There you see the beginnings of it. Kansas, maybe some rain or a mix. And then as this low gets going, just scattered light snows here. And then it gets a little better there for you, Wisconsin, as we get into Sunday morning. Another shot of cold air coming behind that little system. And we're going to start to turn on those snow jets for the Great Lakes. Meanwhile, Monday morning, some pretty heavy rain down here along the Gulf Coast. And here comes Monday. Here comes that lake effect snow. A little bit of snow for western South Dakota, western North Dakota. But really the big story here is going to be the cold air across the lakes and that heavy lake effect snow as we get through the forecast. You're even seeing some Atlantic Ocean effect snow out in the ocean as that you can see those tight isobars here, so that's quite a bit of wind coming out of almost straight north, maybe more northwest. This gets us into midnight Tuesday into Wednesday, and you can just see those snow jets coming off the Great Lakes, and the ocean affects snow off the coast. It gets kind of quiet as we get into Thursday, and see these red lines advancing all the way up into the Canadian border and moving into the Midwest. We're going to warm up mid to late next week for a couple days, and that's the end of the run. But my iPhone says 40 something for Thursday. My official National Weather Service forecast says 38, so I'm hoping for that for Thursday. But probably above freezing for a little bit here in western Iowa for Thursday and Friday, and then we have some more cold air coming. 8 to 14 day temperatures shows that cold air coming. January 17 through 23. Much of the country, again, either near average for the west to below average, and a really good chance of below average for much of the east. Alaska's still warm, except for northern Alaska and Hawaii, really warm. Precipitation-wise, could be copious amounts in the southeast, but really much of the country above average. The exception would be the west coast. So storm rages on, Arkansas into Tennessee, maybe some ice. Georgia, South Carolina to watch out for in the next 24 hours. And otherwise, where things are quieting down. Some pictures on Facebook from my ex, all my exes that live in Texas. She had about almost 6 inches of snow in late afternoon, and it was still coming down. So, and that just north of Dallas. So there's been a lot of snow in the area, much more than we've seen here in the Midwest. Kind of crazy. We'll have an update for you tomorrow, I promise. We'll see you then right here on the Weather Mic.